Hello, all. This is Krunal Patel. I am your host, and today I have a special guest, Mr. John Arnold, who is the principal at J. Arnold and Associates. He is having more than 2 decades of experience in the VoIP industry, so he is more like a veteran in VoIP industry. So he majorly do the provide the insights and helps different companies and the industry players define the strategies for the VoIP businesses. Hello, John. So how are you
Hi,
today?
Kunal. Good. Thank you for having me on. And that's a good introduction. I think both of us go back to the early days of VoIP.
Right.
And when you do something for a long time, you kind of forget sometimes how long you've been doing it. And
True.
we take it for granted now that VoIP is, it's a mature technology, right? It's not
Right.
really disruptive anymore. But there was a time, right, when it was very disruptive and
Mm-hmm.
it was extremely met with a lot of resistance from
Mm-hmm.
the incumbents, obviously, because it was such a threat to
Right.
their business. And it was disruptive and revolutionary. And I think that can be a little hard for people to get a handle on today, where it seems like such a simple thing,
Right.
but as you know, this is where open source came from. It all the hard problems that needed to be solved to make VoIP viable have been done. Like it's
Correct.
ready. So now it just works. Well,
True.
and any engineer will tell you nothing just works. It's a
Works
lot
very
behind.
reliably and efficiently.
Yeah, yeah. So that's another conversation, I think,
Right.
tracing roots of this evolution and what
Right.
came with it. But we're here today, and
Yeah.
VoIP is the standard. I think most people would agree for telephony now.
Right. So today, I would like to know more about like what are your thoughts. So you mentioned about like how given a brief about how VoIP evoluted, right? So now we want to know that what is the future of VoIP, because as you mentioned, VoIP is pretty much standard now. Majority people or companies are utilizing it. Even people are utilizing the open source VoIP telephony services, right? So now, according to you, what is the future of VoIP considering next 5 years of horizon?
Yes. So that's a really great, crystal ball kind of question, Cornell, right? So um the the problems that VoIP initially set to solve was basically to reduce the cost
Right.
of telephony. And it was so good at doing that. It's basically, I wouldn't call it a zero cost, but it's a pretty marginal cost now
Mm-hmm.
to not just provide the service, but of course transport over the internet is near free.
Mm-hmm.
Free and low enough that you can pretty much give it away.
Mm-hmm.
Most VoIP applications that we use, yes, we have them on the desktop for phones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it does power our mobile voice, and we have soft phones on our computer. They're all
Mm-hmm.
great, but not they're really more like applications now, as you know, from as
Right.
a developer. What was radically different about VoIP, and that's what's going to get us to the future, right? Is that telephony traditionally was a service that ran over a hardware-based circuit switch network that required a lot of engineering to make it work right, and
Mm-hmm.
so a cost came with that.
Mm-hmm.
With VoIP, as I said, there's hardly any costs to it, and because it's become so efficient, and of course, broadband has evolved. Like we couldn't have VoIP without good broadband,
Right.
right? And so we're at the point now where VoIP itself has kind of become a commodity, right? It's
So.
not it's a hard application to build a business around. So before it was a service you'd pay money for. It
Mm-hmm.
was a service that required hard phones, which
Mm-hmm.
cost a lot of money to put into place. But
Mm-hmm.
now, because VoIP is totally data driven, right? It's just another data application that runs on the network.
Mm-hmm.
It's like any other application. It's like, email. We don't pay for email. It's like chat. We don't pay for chat. With Zoom
Mm-hmm.
now, We don't pay for video calls. So it's kind of becoming just another communications application. So the danger there, of course, is that it's hard to monetize now,
Mm-hmm.
right? So remember how much, when we all had landlines, how much we were
Right,
spending every month to subscribe for the service.
right.
And there's still a little vestige of that left, but now it's mostly okay. Yes, you can have VoIP service that you pay for, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not expensive like it used to be. And we don't pay for long distance costs much anymore at all, right?
True.
So now it's an application that can just be embedded into anything. So that term, right, click to call, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a little bit of code, you can embed a little chat bot on your screen that pops up and just says, click here, call me. So
Right.
there's not even a 10-digit phone number or a long distance code to dial anymore. It just
Mm-hmm.
connects over the internet. So
Right.
the future is like, well, if you're trying to make money off of VoIP, that's getting a little harder to do now, right? In
Mm-hmm.
terms of a business model that has generates revenue.
Right. So I can recall, if I talk about 1 decade back, uh, so majority service provider were targeting the retail customers, right, which gradually moved to the enterprise customers, right, and now if you look for it, then you will hear more about the UCAS or the CCAS services, right?
Yeah.
And even like if we talk about CCAS, then it's more like any uh, companies can integrate particular CCAS and can have different telephony services, or they can utilize different telephony services, not limited to voice only, right? Can be SMS, can be video or video conference as well, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it, what you just said there. So when you get into things like UCAS and CCAS, we haven't talked about cloud. So, broadband evolution is kind of like a foundational
Mm-hmm.
piece you need to have to support VoIP. But now with cloud kind of becoming again kind of the standard, I don't know, deployment model for modern
Mm-hmm.
communications,
Mm-hmm.
VoIP is now integrated with everything else, right? Telephony was always standalone. There'd be engineers who just managed the phone
Mm-hmm.
systems. It had its own dedicated network within the enterprise. It was
Mm-hmm.
separate from the data network. That's all gone away. And
Right.
now it just runs over the same infrastructure. So that means you can very easily now integrate voice VoIP with other things. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
UCAS is, right? Voice is the start of UCAS. You get
Mm-hmm.
telephony in there, and then you add everything else in the text and the email and the video and the collaboration tools and the meetings. And then you
Right.
have a whole suite of
Mm-hmm.
applications. So the
Mm-hmm.
future for VoIP is, first of all, it has to maintain its presence. In other words, younger generation,
Mm-hmm.
millennials, Gen Zs, whatever, anyone who's under 30, they're all digital. Voice is not usually their first resort for communication,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's no, I wouldn't say last resort, but they're very text based. They like short communication.
Mm-hmm.
They're comfortable being on camera, whereas older generation
Mm-hmm.
people not so much. So for them, um, it's almost like if you didn't include VoIP, they might not even miss it, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of scary, right? So older generation, we like more of that personal interaction. So
Mm-hmm.
I think a challenge for VoIP to have a future is to remain relevant,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so as long as it's part of that UCAS and CCAS bundle, it will
Mm-hmm.
be there, right? As we know in
Mm-hmm.
contact center,
Mm-hmm.
it's multi-channel environment. And so with CCAS platform, voice is still the dominant channel for
Mm-hmm.
customers to engage with a contact center. So voice is not going to go away. But where
Mm-hmm.
it gets interesting for the evolution, Cornell, is
Mm-hmm.
how VoIP is going to evolve into being more than just a telephony app for voice communication. It,
So John, like based on my understanding, VoIP is going to be there as a technology, right? But it is going to evolve, and now like it's more like there is, if we talk about the omni-channel contact centers, right? So definitely there are agents who are answering the calls, which are gradually getting assisted by AI, right? Or in some cases, getting replaced by AI, right? So VoIP is going to be there, but AI is going to be kind of be part of it, right? What do you think about it?
Yeah, so this is like the next kind of generation or next wave of innovation. So,
Uh,
when we started this conversation, Cornell, the first kind of wave was the emergence of VoIP as a digital form of telephony that didn't exist before,
More like
right?
analog to digital.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's a very important kind of evolution stage.
Uh,
Then we got into cloud, which allowed communications to kind of be done anywhere, any place kind of thing, an off-prem, and that opens up the world for other players getting into the game. So, it wasn't that long ago where the idea of a cable company being your phone provider seemed
mhm.
ridiculous. But that's exactly what's happened. So in other words,
Right.
anybody can do anything now. So
Right.
it's not like you can only get VoIP from your telco. That's
Right.
long gone away. But then
Right.
the next evolution, we got to UCAS and CCAS, the next evolution from cloud is AI. So like
Mhm.
it seems like every 10 years or so, something really game changing comes along.
Right.
And cloud that's what laid the foundation for everything that we're doing now.
Mhm.
And then AI is something, it's a real meta trend because it affects everything. So
True.
it's not just VoIP it's affecting every line of business, every
Right.
technology.
Every industries.
Yeah. So now
Right.
what's happening, because remember we said that VoIP is really a data stream and
Uh-huh.
AI is based entirely on data, right? The
Right.
more data you feed it, the more
Right.
valuable it becomes, the more effective it becomes.
Right.
And when you think about how the majority of communication that we
Mhm.
have as humans in workplace or in contact
Mhm.
center, the majority is voice based.
Mhm.
It may not be
Right.
telephony based, but we're speaking to each other.
Right. Right.
As we don't text everything that we do. We do a lot of
Mhm.
talking. So the technology, the value of VoIP is going to rise because a lot of communications happen over VoIP. And as organizations start to realize with AI that we have to provide more data streams
Mhm.
so AI applications can get smarter and safer and more
Mhm.
reliable and more trustworthy.
Mhm.
So organizations are going to start to realize that all these conversations like we're having right now that are voice based, right? They need to somehow be captured and fed into the AI engines, right?
Mhm.
So VoIP becomes attractive because it's where a lot of voice communication happens.
Mhm. So, John, is it right to say that earlier VoIP was kind of limited to telephony industry, but now it is applicable to all industry where they can have different business use cases around the
Yeah,
VoIP technology?
right. So when you get into use cases, it's yeah, I mean, in its purest form, yes, VoIP is a telephony thing, right? Because
Right,
that's what it was invented for. But
right,
now because it exists as an data application, you get more interesting use cases beyond just
mhm,
having communications between people. Like it's
right,
telephony is very much a person to person channel.
correct,
VoIP is yes, person to person, but it also can enable person to machine. So much like we use Siri, right, for search on our
right,
mobile phones,
right,
VoIP can be used to drive a lot of applications
mhm,
that you normally would do with text. But
mhm,
like say you're programming, you want to schedule a meeting, right? You go into your calendar, you're doing it all in your keypad or you're typing out messages and commands and requests
right,
and invites. You
mhm,
can use VoIP to do all of that now, right?
mhm,
You can automate a lot of these. This is where AI comes in, right? You can automate it with voice, not just commands, which is what you're doing with search, right?
mhm,
those are very static queries, but
Mm-hmm.
also you can have conversational
Right.
dialogue with
Right.
person to machine. So in other words, the bot has enough intelligence through AI to
Right.
ask you the questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now VoIP becomes a much more powerful tool because you're using it to automate workflows. So the use
Mm-hmm.
cases get really interesting now.
So more like there is conversation AI or generative AI, right? So, and as you rightly said earlier, it was being used for person to person communication. Now it is more like application to person or application to application communications, right? So
Yes, A to
yeah,
P, right?
yeah, A2P, right,
And
right.
that's the whole messaging space. Yeah, so we're ultimately like where business decision makers have to think differently
Mm-hmm.
is now instead of VoIP being just a channel for communication, which it always will be, but it
Mm-hmm.
also can be used to automate things, which helps reduce operating costs, right? Because now you're streamlining, you're gaining efficiencies in
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day workflows, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's not because again, it's A to P, so it's not like having a conversation with someone, what are you doing tomorrow? Let's go for dinner. It's more like, how do we get the team to come to this next meeting and automate the whole process?
Mm-hmm.
And VoIP can be a very powerful tool for getting that because there are many scenarios when you talk about use cases where it's not convenient or possible to use a keyboard to type these things out, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could be in a
Mm-hmm.
mobile setting. You could just use your mobile phone to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
Now you gain a level of productivity that you didn't have before, right?
Right. So earlier, like when we were focusing VoIP just limited to telephony services, right? There were
Yes.
very limited components. They were tightly coupled with each other, right? And I think now industry is moving, or I would say all the industries utilizing different communication services are moving towards having different third party services integrated with each other, right? So
Yes.
that opens completely different use cases.
Yes. And it's also we talk about things like knowledge management, knowledge
Right,
base.
right.
So, across the organization, there are,
Mhm,
countless conversations, there are countless interactions, A to P,
mhm,
that individually may not mean very much, but
mhm,
they all collectively add up to a lot of data streams that help can build knowledge base within an organization. And this is where you get into the fields of speech recognition and large language models. And yes, you mentioned generative AI, right?
mhm,
Things that now you're not just helping the machine using these tools so machines can understand you,
mhm,
but also how machine-based, AI-based applications can now feed things back to you. And this is again where the knowledge base comes in because now you can say,
mhm,
can you scan all the meetings that we had last year about a particular topic about a new product launch? And
mhm,
because everything, once it's in a data mode, it's
mhm.
searchable, it's
Right,
indexed. Now
right.
you can draw from a much richer pool of information, and
Mhm,
AI tools can kind of sift through that and identify the ones that are most relevant to you. So
mhm,
think of all the time that saves people trying to manually look for things, right?
mhm,
Because AI can do it in an instant, and
mhm,
that's a huge benefit. So as a use case, that's
mhm.
really valuable.
So more like earlier it was utilized for the communication. For example, I call you, right? We have the conversation. Now there are add-on applications or there are different applications where it does the transcript, it provides you the summary of the conversation, even it identifies what is the action item out of this meetings, right? Even a next level, it can even assign particular people in the meeting that okay, this is your action items, like that. So
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
yeah. So like VoIP is still going to be utilized for the communication, probably moving towards utilization of WebRTC technology as well, right? And which has opened another layer where it can be integrated with different AI engines.
Yeah, yeah, and it really does open up a lot of possibilities. Because when you think about if you're in a meeting and there are
Mhm.
10 people talking,
Right.
the AI is now good at getting good enough where it can do both speech recognition for the
Mhm.
transcription, right?
Mhm.
But also speaker recognition because it knows the patterns of every individual's voice. So it
Mhm.
can accurately identify who said what,
Mhm.
right? And that's really powerful because if you had all these multiple conversations going on, you weren't able to capture all of that anyway
Mhm.
before. And
Mhm.
not to mention with, distributed organizations with remote workers all over the world, well,
Mhm.
now we also have all these real-time translation capabilities
Mhm.
where now the language of the speaker doesn't isn't really an issue anymore.
Mhm.
So you could be speaking, whatever, Hindi or Punjabi, whatever, and
Mhm.
I could get it translated to me in real time, and
Right.
likewise for you, from me.
Mhm. Mhm.
In fact, the call after I'm doing with this one is to someone in China. I'll be getting simultaneous translation as we go.
Mhm.
And so now think about what that means for you can hire people who don't have to
Mhm.
speak your native language anywhere
Mhm.
in the world, and well, this is great. Now it opens up my talent pool much bigger, and I
Mhm.
can serve my local markets much better. Those are really strong use cases, right?
Mhm. So, so what is going to be next? So, VoIP, we talk about AI, right? There are different use cases, and many more use cases will come where AI will be an integral part of real-time communication services, right? So, what's next?
Yeah. So one of the what's next things is going to be when you talk about integrating more and more applications.
Mhm.
I think there's definitely going to be a need to elevate
Mhm.
cybersecurity posture here, because it's so easy to do. Like now, today, a lot of these voice technologies don't
Mhm.
need hours and hours of transcripts of recordings of you speaking to mimic your voice. They can
Mhm.
do it with just a few sentences.
True.
And so the ability to what's called voice cloning, right? The ability
Mhm.
to use your voice for good purposes, not an
Right.
issue. But
Right.
now you have the bad actors who have their own motives for taking
Mhm.
advantage of that. Your
Mhm.
competitors, they can infiltrate your organization and create all these false flags.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of risk there,
Mhm.
and especially in contact center where you're dealing with, customers who you've never met personally. You
Right.
don't know if they're impersonating other people or stealing their identity.
Mhm.
So, often they say, in the security realm, VoIP is often the weakest link,
Mhm.
the phone systems in particular, because
Mhm.
passwords are rarely set
Secure.
by
Yeah.
the users. It's just the
Right.
factory, default.
Right.
Very easy things to guess. So for hackers, so often the phone system is the easiest point of access into your data network. So
True.
any data network guy will tell you we have to secure all of those data channels. And
Mhm.
so VoIP, we need a stronger security on that. So I think the more valuable VoIP becomes for creating these new streams based
Mhm.
on conversations, we got to protect it, because
Mhm.
if you don't,
Right.
someone's going to do bad things, and that won't end well for sure. Um,
Mhm.
the other things I suppose would be with where it's going is that the A to P stuff. So conversational bots are going to get more and more sophisticated, that
Mhm.
eventually, because again, most of our communication is voice based, we're
True.
going to get to things like digital twins, where
Mhm.
literally you're going to have every worker can have a virtual assistant that kind of can do a lot of your regular day-to-day tasks, but
Mhm.
also if there's enough AI knowledge base imparted to that it could be like an avatar. That
Mhm.
digital twin of yours could go attend a meeting for you on your behalf
Right. So
right?
I can recall a use case like, if I'm not wrong, earlier in different call centers, usually the agents were given some buttons, like there was feature like avatar, where when they are communicating with any customer, right, and customer asks something, they simply click a button and the system speaks that in their voice, right? Now it is going to be more advanced, where they already have a trained AI with their voice, right? So majority stuff it can take care of. Okay, and when the customer needs really need a human, then connects with them.
Mm-hmm.
So those
That's right.
buttons are replaced with this AI. I can
Yeah,
recall like a decade back I had come across similar functionality, so I just recall that.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. You get these scenarios now where, because you can have like simultaneous translation, right? You can have much more accurate conversations or deeper conversations,
Mm-hmm.
because large language models are evolving very quickly, where they're not just doing the languages everybody knows, but more
Mm-hmm.
locally you'll get different dialects, regional flavors of languages. Then the more you can speak the customer's language in their own language, the
Right.
better conversations you're going to have and learn more from them. So that's pretty powerful use case,
Mm-hmm.
for where it's going to go.
Right. So the cases which we talked about all are majorly focused on different enterprises or different industries. Okay. Now, what is for the individuals or the retail customers? Any thoughts on that? How they can utilize this going forward?
Yeah. So when you say retail customers, are you talking about retail vertical market?
Yes.
You mean like, right,
So
for them?
so to give you an example, when we had like analog phones at our home, which were replaced with the IP phones, okay, so when broadband started, it was replaced with the IP phones, right? So the different internet service providers started providing retail services, retail VoIP services, and they were simply setting up different ATAs at their customers' home, right? And going forward, they started providing everything in like modems, right? And just connect
Mm-hmm.
the IP phone or connect the analog phone, and you can utilize the services over the internet. Okay, so now the use cases which we talked about more related to the enterprise customers or the call centers, or for example, if we talk about unified communication, then unified communication services are more utilized by any businesses or their employees or their sales team or their HR team, like that. Okay, so what is for the individuals who are, for example, right now we are using the mobile services. Okay, I have a SIM card or an eSIM in my mobile. How do I utilize this voice over IP services, or probably utilize the AI into the RTC, which can help me? Any thoughts about that?
Yes. So I just to clarify, when you say on retail, are you talking about consumers?
Consumers, yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, not enterprise.
Not enterprise, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So with consumer, I think what you're going to see is, because they're already comfortable using voice for search, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Amazon Alexa, with Google, with Siri on your Apple phone.
Mm-hmm.
They're comfortable. Again, that is person to machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Interaction,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the idea that they can, on their mobile, where they tend to spend most of their time, one thing that has to be kind of underlying as part of the service is good quality voice.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if the signal is not good, right, and or if there's a lot of latency in the network, the
Mm-hmm.
voice quality will suffer, and if it's not good, it's not going to be very effective with applications that it's
Mm-hmm.
trying to drive.
Mm-hmm.
So first, off the bat, is that the for the mobile carriers, they need to assure that they can provide good quality
Mm-hmm.
voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, for them, and when you talk about like retail as consumers, if we're spending most of our time on mobile device, the
Mhm.
mobile carriers, as you know, are all pushing to 5G,
Right.
right? And in some cases, 5.5G. And that translates, of course, into faster
Mhm.
throughput and greater capacity for more applications. So that's
Mhm.
all good news
Mhm.
for VoIP because now there's more applications it can support,
Mhm.
right? And integrate with. Um, so I think there the applications aren't that different from enterprise in
Mhm.
that for A to P to work effectively, the voice quality's got to be there, but also the ability to transcribe has to be accurate.
Mhm.
And because most of the smartphones today are pretty modern, they can support these applications. So that's the good news. And because 5G is getting better and better, there'll be more sophisticated
Mhm.
applications that you can support on those phones that voice can enable or voice can drive. So that's going to mean more interactive online experiences.
Mhm.
So when you think about I don't know, online shopping, e-commerce,
Mhm.
could be banking, it could be ordering your groceries. Imagine how much more interesting that experience becomes when you can use voice as a channel.
Mhm.
You could either interact with a bot who might fulfill your shopping order for you, right?
Actually, you read my mind. I was gonna talk about the same, that I simply make a call and tell the board that, okay, I want this is items. I want to buy that, and on behalf of me, it purchases it and deliver to me.
Well, yeah, and when you go the other way, if you're a retailer or if you're a brand,
Uh,
this is where the A to P comes in, the messaging. They're getting very sophisticated now where think about how powerful it would be for them to when they know that you are, say, for example, within 100 meters of a store that they want you to shop in,
mhm.
and a voice will come onto your phone as you're searching on a brand. It will start a conversation with you and say,
Mhm.
"Hi, oh, I see you're nearby our store. Why don't you come in and listen? Go ask for a meal. He's going to serve you inside, and if you
Mhm.
come in the next half hour, we'll give you 10% off." Think about
Mhm.
how powerful that would be if it's in your language, in the tone of voice that you're comfortable with. It's
Mhm.
it's friendly. It's not threatening.
Mhm.
That could be think about how that can drive,
Yeah.
commerce very easily, whether it's brick and mortar or online shopping, right?
Mhm. True, true. So, John, we talked a lot about how the voice over IP technology is going to be utilized in future with collaboration with the AI. Okay, so now I would like to request you that can you please summarize this and which will help our audience over here?
Yes. So, to summarize, just like we're doing now, we're talking person to
Right,
person.
right.
Voices are natural way of communicating. Um, One of the things that's really important, I think, for a younger generation to understand, if you've only ever grown up with the internet and having a mobile phone in your pocket all the time, right? Technology is really great for, opening up our world to doing all kinds of new things.
Mhm.
Um, but we're moving more and more, especially with AI, to a lot of automation, and basically applications that know an awful lot about us.
Mhm.
And it's very easy for a lot of people to feel the I don't know, the internet technology itself can feel kind of impersonal, can feel a little big brother like because it knows everything about us, right?
True.
And so there could be some issues with trust. So what I'm getting at is, especially for a younger generation, the more kind of dependent we become on these tools,
Mhm.
um, the more important voice communication telephony is because it's the best form of human interaction than
Mhm.
when we're not face to face. And
Mhm.
think about a lot of people more and more are doing things on their own, atomized. They're not in a group of people. So
Mhm.
when you're not in touch with people, it's very easy to kind of feel alienated and isolated from these
Mhm.
technologies. So the
Mhm.
warmth of voice, the natural tones of voice make us feel more relaxed, they're more, that it's more manageable for us. So I think, it's almost like the more impersonal and smarter AI is becoming, the more we're going to crave human interaction,
Mhm.
because otherwise the bots are going to do everything for us. So I'm being a little cynical, but thinking about wrapping this up and saying, well, what are we trying to talk about here? Telephony, that concept is never really going to go away because
Mhm.
people enjoy talking to each other. That
Right.
the voice is the most
Always.
natural
We will
form.
always love to talk each other. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why it's important to, in other words, if you took it away, I think you would miss it pretty quickly. If all
Mhm.
we did was text, life would be pretty boring, right? So anyone who's in the business of providing VoIP services,
Mhm.
that to me that's a key part of the value proposition,
Mhm.
because ultimately you're marketing VoIP services to humans, right?
True.
If we're selling it just to automated systems and AI engines that there's no humans involved, nobody really cares. But I do care if it's person to person.
Right.
So to me, that's part of the VoIP value proposition, right? It's about
Mhm.
people communicating.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. So thank you, John. Thank you for your time. I really enjoyed having this conversation, and
Hey,
definitely we got a lot of knowledge from your experience. And I'm hoping to have such exciting conversation again in near future.
okay. Thanks, Kunal. I feel the same. So happy to do something down the road. And everyone out there who's listening and watching, thanks. It's been fun.
Thank you, John. Take care.
Okay. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.